Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse, and in this recording I'm going to be exploring the astrology of November 2023. So as we come into this month, we are out of eclipse season. Clearly last month, October, was extremely dynamic astrologically speaking, and I'm actually recording this on the 11th of October, so out there in the world things have been as heated as we might have expected, with Mars activating the South Node, squaring Pluto, kicking off that Pluto square to the nodes, and in the midst of all of that, being in eclipse season, everything seemed to come to a head. Now, as we move into November, yes, we are no longer in eclipse season, but we do still have this activation of Pluto squaring the nodes, and that is going to be set in motion once again. There's going to be conjunctions to the South Node, and most prominently, Eris conjoining the North Node. We're also going to see during the month the Sun's conjunction to Mars, and in actual fact, this conjunction is running through the entire month. Technically speaking, right from the 23rd of October through to December the 15th, the Sun and Mars are in a conjunction. They are traveling very close together now. And that too can create this feisty, still somewhat heated atmosphere. So this is also in play, and there's going to be some interesting interactions with Neptune and Uranus from the Sun and Mars as well. And also during this month, Sedna is going to return to Taurus. So that's going to be another very important factor in what is happening down here on planet Earth. So as we move into the month, the first thing that I wanted to mention actually is that the first week of November, we are going to have a grand trine pattern, and this is between Venus and Pluto and Uranus. I've mentioned in previous readings that Pluto and Uranus are already in this wide trine aspect with one another. It's not going to perfect for a while yet, but we do have this in play now. So we know that these structural changes that we're going through with Pluto are also combined with a lot of instability around our resources, or we could say a push to upgrade our values and change the way that we use our resources. We could say revolutionize the way that we use our resources. And Venus is now playing into all of this with trines to Pluto and to Uranus from Virgo, where Venus is currently traveling. And so we've got this kind of sense that for each of us, we're now being prompted to look at, well, what can I do? What service can I bring to the world that is from my heart, that will help with these wider situations, with these collective movements? So the onus is on us to do the small things that will help. Obviously, there is only so much that any of us can do on an individual level, but those small steps to improve our daily lives and to do the work that we love and just simply to live from the heart on a day-to-day level. This is the story of the grand trine that is in play in the first week of November. Now also during this first week of November, the first major movement is Saturn stationing direct. This is on the 4th of November. So Saturn has been retrograde since June, the middle of June. And during that time, Saturn was asking us to go within and work on the issues that are sabotaging us, that are stopping us from realizing our dreams. And maybe there was also a push to crystallize our vision for what we want for our lives. Now, as Saturn stations direct, it's almost like he's saying, okay, I've given you that period to do that deep inner work. Now, as I move forwards, I would like you to start to put some concrete plans in place to create this dream. Now that you know yourself better, now that you're managing the distractions, now that you're managing your spiritual life and you've put some practices in place to get things together here, now we can start working on this properly. And so Saturn's station on this very potent 0 degrees is really a strong sense of, I am at the beginning of something that could be truly wonderful. But we've got to do the work, as Saturn always says to us. That's always the issue with Saturn. We have to put in time and effort and energy. And we've also got to have some discipline and structure. And that can be a challenge sometimes in Pisces, because Pisces is very kind of like, let's just go with the flow. But Saturn's saying, as lovely as that is, you need to actually do the work. Maybe sometimes when you don't feel like it. And it's funny because this morning, before I started making this recording, I sat down and thought, do I feel like doing this today? And instantly, it was like Saturn was in my face saying, it doesn't matter whether you feel like doing this today. It just needs to get done today. And sometimes it's like that with Saturn, that he asks us to do what needs to be done. And it's not about ignoring feelings, because if you think of Capricorn, the sign that Saturn rules, it is symbolized by the sea goat. So the top half of the symbol is a goat and the bottom half kind of looks a bit like a mermaid's tail. So we know then that the sign that Saturn rules is really connected deeply to that feeling level, but it is about having some kind of conscious awareness that sometimes our feelings can also be distracting. They can also kind of make us go all over the place. And we need to have a firm but kind rein on those feelings. And so this is what Saturn moving direct in Pisces is going to ask us to keep an eye on, so that we can make these dreams real. This is important. What we are visualizing, what we are thinking about, what we are dreaming about, this comes into reality. This is what Saturn in Pisces is saying. And I think, especially as I'm recording this right now, and there are terrible, terrible things going on in Gaza, in Israel, it makes me feel like now more than ever, we need to be conscious of where our heads are going and what we feel, because it's important that we don't give up hope and we don't give up on peace. And it might feel like a long, long way away right now. Obviously, by the time this video comes out, I'm not sure what's going to be going on in the news by then. But certainly at this moment in time as I'm speaking, it feels like it's a long way away. And sometimes we can fall into despair, and that is also Saturn in Pisces. And we've got Neptune there on 25 degrees of Pisces, squaring the galactic center up there in Sagittarius. So this is an ongoing background aspect. And squares can be tense, squares can be difficult. And yes, there can be a feeling at times that all of our dreams, all of our hopes are being sucked into this black hole. But at the same time as all of that, there are these cosmic downloads coming through to us that are encouraging us to dream a better dream, for all of us. And yes, whilst we're dealing with such horrors on the ground right now, it might feel a little bit like spiritual bypassing to kind of go, oh, well, I need to send some prayers to this place. Because I think many of us are wanting to do something that is more concrete, Saturn. But from a spiritual perspective, the work that we do on ourselves and the prayers that we send, this is in some way going towards a ripple effect, a tide of change. Because if we can't find peace within, then we certainly can't find peace without. So both personally and collectively, Saturn's station is certainly going to make some effect here. Pallas will conjoin the South Node on the 7th of November. I'm just noting this because we're getting a lot of activation, like I said, of Pluto squaring the nodes. And this is going to be another one. So Pallas, this is the peacekeeper. This is the peacemaker. This is the one who negotiates and who mediates between peoples. She is a peaceful warrior, the way of the peaceful warrior. But also she is about pattern recognition. And on the South Node here, then yes, there might be some kind of breakdown of peaceful negotiations. That's a possibility. Also, however, it might be that we're just letting go of old patterns of relating and making peace that haven't actually worked. Maybe Pallas here on the South Node is recognizing that this way of dealing with this problem, this conflict, this old issue isn't working for us. So actually we need to take the best of that knowledge and that understanding and that experience, and now let's try something different. Let's try a new way, and let's be brave, Aries North Node, and try a new way. On the back of that, Venus then enters Libra. So, of course, Venus will be travelling through Libra and then conjoining the South Node. That's more towards the end of the month. But as Venus goes into Libra, we get a boost of energy because Venus is happy in Libra. She rules Libra along with Taurus. And now we're really getting some strong sense that our relationships require us to be kind and loving. And this is naturally, again, a peacemaking aspect because Venus wants to get on with everyone. She also likes to be liked. So we're wanting to get people on side. We're wanting to feel love and to express love when Venus goes through Libra. So it's very good for our personal relationships. It's going to help deal with some of these South Node issues in a loving and kind way when Venus transits through Libra. On the 10th of November, Mercury will then enter Sagittarius. So generally speaking, when Mercury goes into Sagittarius, this can change what we're thinking about and change what we're talking about, change the way we're thinking. So Sagittarius is like a really big picture view. This is very much a sign that says, hey, there's all these things that we can think about. We can talk about all these topics, these theories, these subjects. I want to go back to school. I want to travel the world. I want to go places and see different people and have different conversations. It's all so exciting. Mercury in Sagittarius, however, is not at his best because this is very far away from Gemini, which is the sign that Mercury rules. So he's a little bit overwhelmed. So we can get some mental overwhelm when Mercury goes into Sagittarius. However, we are going to have an immediate square between Mercury and Saturn. So yes, squares are a little bit tense, but it kind of feels like Saturn is throwing a bit of a lifeline over to Mercury and saying, before you get lost, before you run off with all these ideas and kind of run your mouth off at the same time, because sometimes Sagittarius can be a little bit blunt and doesn't think before saying things, Saturn is going to come in and say, let's just rein this in a bit. Let's just hold your horses. Hold your horses. Think first. Think before you decide. So it might be that we have all these great ideas, but then feel like immediately there's a problem, there's a block, there's an issue, or there's a doubt. Sometimes Mercury square to Saturn can feel like I don't know enough about this, especially with Mercury in Sagittarius, a sign that's associated with universities. So it's like, I've got this great idea, but I don't know enough, and now I feel really stupid. I feel really silly. So it's really important that we counter any kind of stern inner voices that are sort of telling us off, because that's not going to help. What will help is to reframe it. Okay, I'm missing some information, or I don't know enough about this, so I actually need to kind of do some learning here. I need to find the right information, or even find the right person, someone who's got some experience. Saturn, old father time, he's got plenty of experience behind him. So we maybe need to talk to some other people who know more than us, so that we can actually start to then formalize these ideas that we have for the future. Sagittarius is a very future forward kind of sign. On the 11th of November, we start to get all of this activation coming in with Mars and the Sun. So as I said before, they are already in a conjunction with one another. And now we're getting Mars opposite to Uranus. And then the Sun is going to follow up with that opposition to Uranus on the 13th of November. So Mars and the Sun opposing Uranus. So this is a very dynamic collection of aspects, because we have the Sun and Mars joined together, very close together now, and that can bring up some issues connected with ego. So the Sun can be the ego, and Mars is also the will. So it feels very willful. These two together feel willful, especially in connection with Uranus. Because even just Mars opposite to Uranus, that can speak of being reckless, very impulsive. It can be kind of sudden action. So it's very unpredictable, the things that we do, especially if we act from a place of ego. If we are being willful, then the actions that we take can have unexpected consequences. It's very reactive. It's very volatile. It's very electric and static. It's like you don't know where the lightning is going to hit. That's how this aspect can feel. And so we can feel somewhat anxious with Uranus involved. And sometimes if we're feeling too anxious, then we can do things that we wouldn't normally do because we're trying to get rid of that sense of anxiety. Maybe it's just that other people are super unpredictable right now. That's an opposition. It brings in others. So somebody does something that seems really shocking, or it just surprises you. And it's also possible that maybe there are some connections around money matters. Perhaps there are some issues with the banks in the wider world, something to do with financial instability with all of this going on. That's a possibility. I'm not a financial expert. I'm not a financial astrologer, but I'm just sort of presenting the idea there's a possibility that things might be a little volatile around this time, possibly around the stock markets and things like this. But also on a private level, maybe we are fighting over resources and trying to free up resources, or trying to free ourselves from feeling indebted to someone else or to some other agency. So yeah, maybe there is something about debt and investment and all of these kinds of things coming through with these aspects. Of course, there is always a best way to use these challenging aspects as well. So mostly that is about being brave enough to free ourselves, as long as we think first and allow our intuition to guide us, because Uranus can also be an intuitive planet. But it works very differently to Neptune. Neptune is all feeling, like I feel deep in my heart, this is what I need to do. Uranus doesn't do the touchy-feely stuff. Uranus just drops the information in your head. Wow, brilliant idea. Why didn't I think of that before? Gosh, I could do this. It feels like that. It feels quite exciting. But we do have to be very grounded, because we have this electrical vibe going on here. So we have to be very, very grounded so that we can kind of channel the energy that is available, because it is very high frequency. So there is a lot of energy, but sometimes it can come in fits and starts because of this electrical sort of vibe that comes from Uranus. Now, all of the story that I've just said about the Sun conjunct Mars opposite to Uranus is going to be drawn into the new moon in Scorpio. So this is on the 13th of November. So Mars opposite Uranus, the 11th of November, new moon in Scorpio, 13th of November, and then the sun perfecting its opposition to Uranus also on the 13th of November. So we can see how potent this is. This is a very, very powerful new moon. So generally speaking, the new moon in Scorpio, it's time to begin some kind of project or endeavor that is going to help you to maybe get closer to someone else. It's a sign that's associated with intimacy. But also, I want to say it's almost like getting closer to yourself, because this is a sign that is connected with deep diving into the unconscious, into the subconscious and the unconscious. It's into the mysteries of the self. And it also might be that I want to make some kind of new start that is going to put an end to a certain chapter in my life, because Scorpio is also about endings and closure, death, change. There are potent changes we desire to make, especially with that Mars opposite to Uranus involved here. So we know that we need to be brave if we're going to really radically change things. But at the same time, we've got to be deeply honest with ourselves, because Scorpio does kind of demand the truth. So it's a very powerful lunation, a very powerful new start. On the 17th of November, we're going to have Mars trine to Neptune and the Sun trine to Neptune. And then the Sun and Mars are going to conjoin on the 18th of November. So I'm going to read this all together. And of course, we still have the Sun-Mars conjunction opposite to Uranus. That is still in play. But now both of them, as they come together, they are connecting with Neptune. There is a long conversation going on with these planets, and it makes me feel like Neptune is saying here, we do need to approach these very turbulent times in a peaceful way, or in an empathic way, a compassionate way. We need to remember to be compassionate with ourselves, kind to ourselves. But trines also can sometimes be a little slippery. So if we are feeling shocked, surprised, things are just kind of not going as we expected, then there is the possibility that that trine can be a little bit unwieldy. And so we slip along that trine and we want to escape. We want to run away. We kind of feel like, I don't want to do this really deep work. Sun conjunct Mars there in Scorpio. I don't want to do this deep work. I want to have a pajama day and watch some movies and forget about it all. There can be this sort of feeling, especially if we're feeling anxious with Uranus. So the high vibe way of reading this is that we are motivated Mars to really get to the core of the self and to forge some really powerful, honest, deep, intimate relationships with others. It's also a motivation to share the depths of ourselves, to share what we have with others, which of course is a beautiful thing. Neptune reminds us we are all connected. There is no difference. I mean, this is the thing with Uranus. Uranus can speak of difference. If we're fighting over our differences, how can we come together? So Neptune comes in and says, it is possible. Despite all of these differences, despite all of the upsets, it is possible. You can find a way. So if you are feeling stressed, anxious around this time, yes, it is important to lean into your spirituality. And yes, it might also be important to take a little bit of time out if the news is driving you mad, or if other situations in your own life are just becoming a bit overwhelming. Then yes, sometimes we need a bit of retreat, which is not always comfortable for Mars, but Mars trine to Neptune is more inclined to remember that a rested warrior is a warrior who's going to be able to fight more battles on another day. So sometimes we do need to allow the spiritual warrior to rest. And also this is a super creative pattern. If you are a writer, if you are an artist, anyone who creates, Mars trine to Neptune, Sun Mars trine to Neptune is a reminder that the imagination really is limitless. And there are things that you can use here. In fact, it's almost like saying your imagination is a tool. It's a tool to change things. So if you're struggling with the sort of the real world experience of trying to implement changes, say Uranus in Taurus, and feeling like this is hard work because I feel insecure about all of this. Neptune is saying, maybe imagine something different. Imagine a different future. And I know that's easy to say and harder to do as somebody who loves to catastrophize. But yeah, Mars and the Sun trine to Neptune is offering us the imagination as a tool, as an agent of change. And this is something that we can all work on. We can all imagine something better for ourselves and something better for the world. And as if to emphasize all of that, we have Asteroid Deucalion, which is conjunct the Mars-Sun conjunction. So we have a triple conjunction here. We actually have a quadruple conjunction here because we have Ceres involved now as well. So here is the new Earth. So Deucalion was the son of Prometheus, he who stole fire from the gods. And Deucalion is the central character in Greek mythology of a story about a flood, a deluge. It's very similar to the idea of Noah's Ark, the flood story from the Bible. So here we have a story of the earth being flooded, a deluge. The gods are angry. Zeus flooded the earth. And it was Deucalion and his wife who ended up being the only humans to survive this. And therefore, they seeded a new earth. They gave birth to a new generation of humans. So Deucalion can very much be associated with the idea of sort of wiping the slate clean and starting again. There's more to that asteroid, but just for the purposes of what we are talking about here, and even with Neptune, now I'm just realizing what I've just said, talking about a flood, and there is Neptune. So we are really getting this story coming into play, that there is a flood of feelings. There is problems with the waters. Of course, we've seen a lot of actual flooding during this year, but there is also the potential for us to build a new world after all of this bad stuff has been kind of flushed out. So Deucalion is an important player, an important character within all of these stories, with the Sun's conjunction to Mars, opposite to Uranus, trine to Neptune, that all plays into the new moon in Scorpio. As we move towards the final week of November, there is some very potent patterns coming into play here and some more important stories. We have firstly Mars sextile to Pluto. So this is on the 22nd of November. So this is good. It gives us some strength. It's a boost of strength, a boost of courage. And it also gives us a constructive impetus to take action, to change things, or to get rid of what we no longer need, because Pluto can also speak of eradication. Pluto rules Scorpio, so Mars is also strong in his own sign here. So there is huge motivation to change things. And then we also have the Sun entering Sagittarius on this date as well. So that is going to give us this adventurous spirit. When the Sun goes into Sagittarius, starting Sagittarius season, we are asked to look at where we're going. We are asked to broaden our horizons, because this is the sign associated with travel and the overseas. And it's also a sign that is connected with our beliefs. So the sun in Sagittarius is going to ask us, what do you believe in? Because whatever you believe is going to dictate how you see your future, how you envision your future. So if you are looking ahead and kind of thinking doom and gloom, then it's time to check in with, what do I personally believe about myself, about the world? Where is my faith? Where is your faith? The sun in Sagittarius is going to call on us to explore these kinds of issues. Now, also on this date, it is a really important date. Sedna is returning to Taurus. So that's the first thing. And also hold in your mind that Mars and Ceres are now both anaretic. So they're both in the very final degree of Scorpio, which of course immediately puts them in opposition to Sedna returning to Taurus. This is very acute. Anaretic degrees, 29 degrees, they are acute, they are critical, they are volatile. They are also liminal space. We are between one thing and the next thing. We are between two worlds, two places, two doorways in this kind of no man's land. And that can be disconcerting, but at the same time, there are great opportunities to change things, and a feeling that we're concerned about our resources. This is Sedna moving back onto the 29th degree of Taurus. So let's just get a little bit of a feel about Sedna, because this is a massively important transit. Sedna re-entering Taurus for the last time in our lifetime. Sedna is going to go back into Taurus on 29 degrees of Taurus. It's a degree that is noted to be a little bit difficult. It's associated with the weeping sisters of the Pleiades. And just by that term, the weeping sisters, we know that this can be a challenge sometimes, this degree. Now, there's also a lot of good things about this degree, so please don't worry if you have aspects connecting with this degree or natal positions. It doesn't mean that your life is going to be terrible or this transit is going to be terrible. But we're just kind of talking about more mundane issues right now. And this feeling that collectively, because Sedna does speak of the collective, she actually speaks of generations of evolution. She has an 11,400 year orbit. So she speaks of ages, the passing of ages. She has watched us evolving, and she is now coming to this last degree again of Taurus to complete her mission here. Sedna's action is to dissect things, to break things apart, to tear things apart so you can put them back together again and evolve, to morph into something else, to change. Again, that word change, I feel like I'm using it a lot, but we are in a time of change, especially with Sedna on the 29th degree of Taurus, a sign that is associated with the very land itself. The earth under our feet is changing. How we use our resources, again, is changing and must change. Our values must change if we want to survive. Taurus is associated with life, Scorpio, death, very simplistic. And of course, there's much more to both signs. But if we are just kind of playing with the imagery and the story, there is a little bit of a feeling here of life and death. And we are contemplating this for ourselves, for the world, what is going on. We're contemplating all of this. And when we are in those kinds of situations where we're confronted with all the things that can be difficult in life, it forces us to figure out what's most important. And that's all that Sedna is wanting us to do right now. What is actually important, people? That's what Sedna seems to be saying right now. because it feels like we've got a little lost, perhaps with Neptune. We've got a little lost. We don't kind of know what's real and what isn't right now. And maybe we're struggling to see a future. Sun going into Sagittarius, also opposing Sedna before Sedna goes back into Taurus. So we've got all these very conflicting feelings going on. And of course, not to mention the fact that Pluto is still squaring the node. So yeah, it's big and it's intense. But it is encouraging us to really look at what do we value, what is important. Because once Sedna is finished with this, she's not going to move off that 29th degree. She's going to be there now until next April. April the 27th, 2024, Sedna will finally move out of Taurus. She will move into Gemini, and she will be there until the 12th of April, 2067. So for some of us, for the rest of our lifetime, Sedna will be in Gemini. And then she will start this whole new journey of, again, dissecting, taking everything apart in the realms of the mind, consciousness, communication, language. She's going to ask us to evolve in all of these areas. So this evolution of consciousness needs a foundation. We need to get secure as far as our planet is concerned, our food systems. This is also Taurus. Our money, financial systems, or the way that we pay for goods or barter for goods, whatever we do to be able to share what we have, calling in Scorpio energies as well. The abundance of the earth, we've got Jupiter there in Taurus, of course, too. So all this abundance that we have, we need to find a better way, says Sedna, anaretic in Taurus, to share these resources so that we are ready then for this evolution of consciousness when she moves into Gemini next year. So yes, it's all super, super potent. Mars will continue to oppose Sedna, perfect that opposition to Sedna on the 24th of November. And then Mars will go into Sagittarius, still traveling very close to the Sun. So now, once again, we have that movement, that impetus to chase the dream, to chase the truth, to even fight for the truth. And I will just drop in here that Mars in Sagittarius in shadow can sometimes speak of righteousness and religious wars, religious conflicts, these kinds of things. Obviously, that's uppermost in my mind right now because of where we are in the world with what's going on in Israel and Gaza right now. But this can happen anywhere, at any time. We can fight over what we believe in, or we could get motivated to find out more, to understand, to better understand. Wherever Mars moves, we become braver. So we are braver when it comes to the idea of exploring new territory, whether it is literally, I want to go on holiday to a place I've never been before because that would feel exciting and it will be a challenge for me. This is Mars. He loves a challenge. Or it could be getting a really heavy textbook and sitting down and reading something that is really going to be challenging to you mentally so that you can learn more about a particular situation or a particular topic. So yes, it's great for studying. Mars in Sagittarius is motivating to know more. So as long as we can avoid the more crusading aspect of Mars in Sagittarius, then we can use this energy in a really positive way. Thankfully, we will have Saturn helping us with this. So like I said earlier, with Mercury entering Sagittarius, it immediately formed a square to Saturn. The same thing's going to happen with Mars. There is some restraint here, and I do feel we kind of need that restraint around this time. But sometimes with Mars square to Saturn, what can happen is that we can get very frustrated. We're frustrated with the rules. We're frustrated with being told what we're supposed to think. We're frustrated because we can't get to where we want to be. There's some kind of block or stop in the way. We're frustrated because elders or someone from a different generation is preaching to us. There can be this kind of preachy vibe that comes through from Sagittarius sometimes. And so we've got to sort of understand that we need to practice what we preach, and preferably teach rather than preach. So there is something here about living the path that we believe in, living our truth, being our truth, and acting in accordance with that truth. And this is what Mars square to Saturn is encouraging us. If we're going in the wrong direction just because we got excited with Mars and the Sun being in Sagittarius, then Saturn will once again say, hold your horses, wait. Give yourself some time. Maybe we need to actually crystallize where we're going instead of trying to go everywhere and do everything, which is what Mars in Sagittarius can be about. It can feel scattered, especially with Mercury. Now, speaking of Mercury, also on the 25th of November, Mercury still in Sagittarius is going to enter the shadow zone of the upcoming retrograde, which begins in December. I think it's the 13th. I haven't got it on my notes here, but I think it's the 13th of December. So we know then that once Mercury enters the shadow of the upcoming retrograde, that we are starting to go over territory that we're going to have to come back to. So things that we're thinking, things that we're discussing around this time, ideas, communications, connections, we're going to have to revisit this later down the line. So it's important just to pay attention. What's coming up for you around this time? What am I starting to think about, talk about, or even worry about? Where am I trying to escape, or where am I trying to find the truth? What am I trying to run away from? Sometimes Sagittarius can have that kind of energy as well. So we're just starting to question some of these things. And then on the 27th of November, we're going to have a full moon in Gemini, which is going to raise all of these issues, these questions about where are we going? What do I believe in? What am I fighting for? All of these things are going to be uppermost because we're going to have the full moon in Gemini, and it's going to be squaring Saturn. So we're going to have the moon opposite to the Sun-Mars conjunction. It's also going to be opposite Ceres as well and squaring Saturn. So we know then that there is quite a lot of tension around this lunation connected with communication, what we know, what we think we know, education, schooling, our transport systems, air travel, travel underground, travel in the air, travel by boat. Everything is connected with movement in this lunation. And we're also going to have Eris conjoining the North Node on the same day as well. So Eris always wants to get her nose into the situation. So not only have we got this super animated full moon, we also have Eris shouting from the North Node. And she's always saying, this is the problem. I'm going to make a problem. I'm going to make it seem like I'm the one making the problem. But actually, the problem was here all along, and I'm just pointing it out. So yes, there is discord. So maybe there is some kind of discord that is related to conflict. This is because Mars is opposing the full moon. Mars is the ruler of Aries, where Eris is sitting on the North Node. Now, whether that is because of international conflicts of some kind, or whether it is something that's going on in our own lives, Eris is pointing out that there are triggers here. There are things that we are fighting over, but maybe we don't know enough. Maybe we need to stop and consider where we're actually working against ourselves here. This is with Saturn squaring the Sun and Mars, and also Ceres, and also the Moon. So we've got to figure out what's going on deep down so that we don't keep having the same conversations, the same arguments, the same problems. And also as well, I'm just thinking about the fact that Gemini, where the moon is a sign that is associated with duality, black and white, yes and no, night and day. It's all duality. Everything has its opposite. But Saturn in Pisces, where the T-square is pointing us towards, so Saturn is actually trying to help us resolve all of these oppositions and dualities. Saturn in Pisces tells us that it's all connected. You are all one. We are all one. We are all one. And therefore, why are we fighting one another? Why are we fighting ourselves? There is so much history, so much ancestral, spiritual history that we can draw upon with Saturn in Pisces. And some of the things that we're experiencing as human beings are ages old. That is also Saturn in Pisces. Age-old conflicts, age-old dialogues that just keep repeating. But remember, we are going to soon have Sedna moving into Gemini next year, as I mentioned before. So things evolve very, very slowly. And sometimes it's very painful to witness this incredibly slow evolution. But things are changing. It's not just staying the same, which is, I think, where we can sometimes feel a bit trapped sometimes. We think it's all staying the same out there in the world or in our own lives. Nothing is moving, we say to ourselves. Nothing is changing. It's all as bad as it ever was. But it is changing, but it's slow. And this is where we need to have that faith to keep going. Saturn is relentless, to keep going. And we end the month with Venus on the South Node, once again reminding us that not only are there difficult things, stuck things, bad relationships, money problems to let go of, we also have the beautiful things in life, the gifts, the things that we love, the people we love, the things that are truly precious. And if we know this, remembering that Venus rules Taurus as well, where Sedna now sits on that 29th degree. If we know what is important, if we know what matters, that is going to help us to conquer the discord. That is what is going to help us to create harmony, Venus, from disharmony, Eris. There is a way to create harmony, but we have to let go of what isn't important so that we can find our way. This concludes my reading for November 2023. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please do click a like and subscribe. It does help with the algorithm and all that jazz. If you would like to hear more from me and support this channel, I do have a Patreon. I also have Substack. So I will leave the links below, along with all the other links of places you can find me on the internet. So hopefully I will see you in one or other of those places. But in the meantime, I wish you many blessings on your path.